So, Parshas Behalotcha. Let's just take a quick look at what we're going to talk about. Parshas Behalotcha begins on 774 in Yom Moshe. And I want to focus on the beginning of the Parsha, which talks about Aaron lighting the menorah. Right? And usually, and many times, there's a connection between the end of the previous Parsha and the next Parsha that we start with. There's usually some kind of internal connection, and not just simply random sequences come one after the other. For example, we studied Naso last week. We pointed out there's a connection between the counting of the Levium to the counting of the Israelites in Parshas Bamidbar, and so forth and so on. So the beginning of Parshas Behalotcha deals with lighting the menorah. We'll just take a look at the first 4 verses. Right? Moshe Lemor, God spoke to Moshe saying, Daber el Aaron v'amartei elav, when you speak to Aaron and tell him, Behalotcha tanerot, when you light the menorah, when you light the candles, el mul pnei menorah yiru shavat tanerot. The 7 candles shall be facing the menorah. It looks like it means facing towards the center of the menorah, because they're in the menorah. The 7 candles will be lit, and face towards the center. So Aaron did the same thing and faced the center of the menorah. Moshe, as God commanded Moshe. And then we told in verse number 4, and this is how the menorah was made. It was made of one chunk, one hammered out gold, one chunk of gold that was simply just formed into shape or banged into shape. From the beginning, from the base to the flowers, the ends where the branches were had different flower designs coming out. Make sure it's one piece. Like the vision that was shown to Moshe how to build the menorah. So they made the menorah itself. So here's the question: what's this piece doing here? What are we talking about building the menorah? They built the utensils for the Mishkan. That was quite a while ago. You look back in Parshas Truma, when all the different items for the Mishkan were built, on page 450, Moshe's commanded in Parshat Truma B'Tzavet towards the end of the book of Shemot how to build each of the items of the Mishkan. And he's told how to make the Aron Brit. And then he's told how to make the shofar on page 450. Okay? Without even looking at the psukim themselves, you can see they got pictures on the page itself, 450. Mm-hmm. Yes? Good. So 450, you see the menorah is being done. If you look at the page before, you see there's a picture of the shulchan, the table with the showbread on. The page before, you see there's a picture of the aron how the aron was meant to hold the tablets. And each of the items was built for the Mishkan until all the items were put together. And then you get to look 457, they show you how they're building the planks to make the walls of the side of the Mishkan. So we know how to make the menorah. The menorah is spelled out how it's going to be built together with all the different other items in the Mishkan. So why does at this point does the menorah simply be told to Aaron? Hashem says to Moshe, tell Aaron, and when you're going to light the menorah, they're going to face it this way, and you're going to do this, and the menorah was built and chunked together and so forth. Why is it here? What's going on here? So it doesn't seem to follow anything specifically. The beginning of the Parshas Bamidbar, Sefer Bamidbar, deals with packaging up and packing the different items that would be transported, one of which was the menorah. Maybe it's here because we're recounting some of the items themselves. Come on in, good, find a place, plenty of places today. And
all duffing close from steel to...
Yeah, we...
I didn't know that.
I don't know why it's so backed up. Duffing across the steels, I don't know. So, so we're just talking about the fact that the beginning of Parshas Behalotcha is the command about building a menorah. So what does the menorah really have to do in Parshas Behalotcha? It seems to really be out of place. So the Medrash actually says that the reason it's here on page 774 is because when all the different Nesiim, all the different leaders of each tribe brought their own personal gift to the Mishkan, which is the end, which is really the big piece that we have before in chapter 7, listing the different utensils or different karbanot that were brought by the different Nesiim, the different leaders. So Aaron became very depressed, and he said, "Why? What happened to me? I want to have a special karban itself." even though he was bringing his own korbanot every day of the dedication of the Mishkan. I want to bring a special korban like Nesiim are bringing. So Hashem says to Moshe, tell Aaron that you will light the menorah. Your special gift is the fact that your descendants will be lighting the menorah in the Beis HaMikdash.
Every day.
Right?
Every day.
And you're going to do it every day. So they got a one-shot deal. They were called up. They brought the different korbanot, different items, different utensils to the Mishkan. It spelled it out in chapter 7. But you know what? They're going to recede into the background because you and your descendants are going to work in building the Mishkan and lighting the Mishkan and lighting the menorah. That's why it's put here at this point. Now here's the question. The truth is, that's not such a big deal because one day the Mishkan will turn into a Beis HaMikdash and the Beis HaMikdash will be destroyed. So it looks like God is saying you have something forever and forever. So therefore the Ramban is going to say, and actually there's a very famous commentary of the Ramban, that the promise that's made to the Almighty here that your descendants will light the menorah is not about that your descendants will light the menorah in the Beis HaMikdash, but there will come a holiday in the future of the Jewish people, which we call Hanukkah. Everybody will light a menorah, and we will remember that it is because of your descendants, Aaron, that we're lighting them in this menorah. What does that mean? Who were the Chashmonaim? The Chashmonaim were descendants of the Kohanim. Matisyahu, Kohen Gadol, Chashmonai Ivanav. So Matisyahu was a Kohen Gadol, and the Yehuda Maccabi were Kohanim. And their descendants took over the leadership as Kohanim.
This Matisyahu, Kohen Gadol, this was the Gemara said, after 80 years he changed his Kamstoki?
No, that's Yochanan Kohen Gadol. Not Matisyahu Kohen Gadol. Yochanan Kohen Gadol became a Tzduki. When is that? That is one of Matisyahu's descendants.
That's probably descendants.
Yes, probably John Hyrcanus.
Something they were proselytizing.
No, this was actually one of the descendants of the Maccabean. Was a Kohen Gadol. He was Hyrcanus, and he later became more aligned with the Sadducees, with the Stukim, than he was with the Pharisees.
Wasn't there, Moshe, the line of the Hashmonaim that started to proselytize? The only time in our history that we were proselytizing, I believe.
It's probably not the only time in our history we're proselytizing. They probably proselytized during the days of Solomon and David, where we were successful. What I think we may be saying is that they were concerned that the lineage may not have been pure, may have been diluted. Correct.
Yeah.
But the real issue with the Chashmonaim is as they went further down into the generations, they themselves became less committed to the ideals of the Prussian, which is the oral law, and they became more or less committed to the ideals of Judaism. So that the whole battle of Hanukkah becomes a battle that was for real religious commitment, and it tends to get watered down. But we celebrate Hanukkah because it talks about the miracle of Beis HaMikdash. So what the Ramban is going to say is that, it's not about just Aaron having the reward that his descendants will light the menorah in the Beis HaMikdash, which was finite. It's about that one day will be a holiday called Hanukkah, which is based upon the fight of your descendants, and they were the ones who kind of took over the leadership at that point, the Matisyahu, Kohen Gadol, Chashmonayu, Banav, and they will be the ones, we'll always have a holiday that will remember your descendants. We tend to forget that the Chashmonayim were Kohanim. Now, Chazal to some extent look negatively upon the fact that they became kings because kings should only come from the house of David, and they were really from the house of Aaron, which is the house of Levi, and they took kingship. They took upon themselves to be the Kohen as well as being the kings. The Kohen is valid; they were Kohanim, but to become the official king, the official monarch, that itself was a step that probably they should not have taken. However, initially they did not take kingship in the first generation. They only called themselves leader and Nasi. They didn't call themselves Melech himself. Okay? So this is really the long piece in the Ramban. The Chiddush of the Ramban is when HaKadosh Baruch Hu tells Aaron in this medrash that your descendants will light the menorah, it does not mean the menorah in the Beis HaMikdash as everybody thinks. It means the menorah of lighting the Hanukkah candles that we do every day. So let's take a look at this long piece of Ramban here. We don't have that many Englishes to go around, so maybe you guys can work on together. Sure. Okay. This is Hebrew, Ken. First RAMBAN Behalotcha. Okay. This should be the first one in Behalotcha. Probably here. One. Right here. It can't be upside down too well. What does it say here? Lama. That's it. Okay, good. So it's going to be right down here. So Behalotcha Tanei wrote. So says the Ramban. What's that?
Okay.
Right here, good. Lama nismecha parshat menorah lachanukat hanasiyim. So says the Ramban, why is it that the lighting of the menorah, this parsha about the menorah, is put after the dedication of the Nasiim who each day brought their own sacrifices, their own gifts to the Mishkan, which was the last bunch of psukim in Parshat Naso. We didn't see it last week, but really the last chapter goes through every different Nasi brings their own different gift a different day. There were 12 days of 12 Nasiim. For 12 days in a row, they're bringing different gifts. So why is this following the end of Naso, which talks about the dedication of the Mishkan and the Nasiim bringing their gifts? Why does it now flip in to talk about lighting and the command to Aaron? Lefi, because after all, lighting the menorah was already written in Parshat Truma, and it's already mentioned again in Parshat Vayakel. Lefi Keshara Aaron Chanukat Nasiim, because when Aaron saw the dedication by the Nasiim of the different gifts they were giving, Chol Shodato, he became very depressed, very saddened. Shlo hayem mahem b'Chanukah. He was not part of these dedicatory kind of sacrifices. He wasn't bringing something of a free will offering by himself. Lo hu v'lo shivto, not him. And really none of the Kohanim made free will gifts to the dedication ceremony. They did not make any special donations. So Amalek Kadosh Baruch Hu, so God says to Aaron, this is the Medrash that is being quoted here by Rashi, Chayecha, by your life, shel chag gdola mishelahem. You will have a special, you'll have a greater opportunity, shatom adlik u'meitivet hanirot boker ve'erev, that you will light the menorah morning, and you will light the menorah every evening as well. It's actually a machloket. It's a discussion among a number of the Rishonim. When the menorah was it lit twice a day? Or was it lit only in the evening? So when you look at the Psukim, simple meaning of Psukim looks they lit the menorah at night. But a lot of the commentaries, including the Ramban, including the Rambam, including Rashi, including the Medrash and the Rambam, say the menorah was lit at night. It was cleaned in the morning and relit in the morning and burnt there for 24 hours. So two different shifts of menorah being lit.
The Ner Ma'arav is always.
Correct, but the Ner Ma'aravi may have been always till the evening, may not have been always for all the time. It always burnt the entire night. It was not always Ner Daluk the whole 24/7. Okay? Certain times, certain areas, yes. V'lon bareli, says the Ramban, v'lon bareli lama nichamu bad lakadenirot. So the Ramban says, okay, this is a great consolation prize to Aaron, that your descendants will light the menorah, but it's not such a great consolation prize. Why did he choose the menorah, first of all? V'lo nichamu b'ktoras baboka v'erev. Why not about putting the spices on the Mizbeach? That was done once again also morning and evening. They brought different ketoras, different offerings, different spices. Sheshib chubal katuv. As it says in the end of Sefer Dvarim, in Parshat Hazinu, in Parshat V'zot HaBracha, it says V'yasimu K'torah b'yapecha v'cholil mizbechecha. They will place. This is the bracha given to Levi. Your descendants will put the K'torah is b'yapecha in front of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So you see, that is a great honor to put the K'torah. So why single out the menorah and not single out anything else? V'chol karbanot. And what about all the other sacrifices? Minchat chavitim. There was a mincha which was made like in a pan of avodat Yom Kippurim. And also, who can only do the avodah Yom Kippur? The Kohen Gadol. So she'ena k'shera elabo. The only one who could do it was the descendant of Aaron, the Kohen Gadol, v'nechnas l'fnai v'lefnim. And he was the only one who got to go into the Holy of Holies, the Sanctum Sanctorum. V'hu kadosh Hashem omeid be'echalol l'shar tol v'rech b'shmo. He's the only one who stands in the mikdash. He's the only one who serves before God. He's the only one who blesses God. V'shivto kulam mishatei l'keinu. And the tribe of Aaron, the tribe of the Leviim, the descendants of Aaron, are the ones who serve God. So why is the consolation prize to Aaron that you're going to light the menorah? The consolation prize should be, you guys are going to run the temple service. You're going to do 1,000,001 things. Why specifically the menorah? V'od. Second question, says the Ramban. Matam l'chalisha dadadazu. What is really the reason that Aaron was so depressed or so disheartened, according to the Medrash which Rashi quotes, because he couldn't bring a free will offering? Follow karbanol gadol mishal nesiim. He also brought actually his own karban every day, which was greater than nesiim. Shekriv bayamim ahem karbanot harei koyimei miluim. Who is the one who's actually serving as the kohen for the entire celebration of the dedication of the Mishkan? Who is it? The first 7 days Moshe does it, but who does it afterwards? Aaron is the one. He is bringing every day. There are certain designated korbanot that were brought that are not free will offerings, but he's bringing them. So he's serving. So what do you mean he's depressed, disheartened that he can't bring free will offerings? So maybe say he was disheartened because these were templated, these were set. He couldn't add, he couldn't detract. And he was disheartened because he saw the Nesiim brought of their own free will. They brought an additional sacrifice, additional offerings. But then again, lighting the menorah is also not a free decision. He's forced to, he has to light the menorah. It's designated to light the menorah every day. We're saying Aaron was disheartened because Nesiim got to bring something additional, and all he got to do was bring what was required. He couldn't add to that. So what's the consolation prize? You, Aaron, are going to light the menorah every day. But you've got to, that's a requirement. It's also not a free will offering. We're not allowing you to make another additional something donation to the Mishkan. So first of all, why is the menorah more important? Why not talk about Aaron being a Kohen doing all the avodah? Second of all, why is the menorah special? And third of all, it's really not any special. It's no more special than the korbanot he is bringing for the 8 days that were being done already in the Chanukas of the Mishkan. So therefore, what Rashi seems to say that the consolation prize to Aaron was lighting the menorah in the Beis HaMikdash doesn't seem to be fully acceptable to the Ramban. Says the Ramban, and here's this key. Aval inyan haggadah zu, the reason for this medrash, Lidrosh Remez min HaParsha Chanukat Shnei Rot. This is really a hint for what will take place in the future. Many times the Ramban, as we've seen, says events that happen in the Mishkan, in the Torah, are really precursors. They're almost like hints about what will take place in the future of the Jewish people. What happened to Avram, to Yitzchak, and Yaakov are events that will happen later to the Jewish people. What happens here as well is also a precursor for what will happen in the future. This is Monday morning quarterbacking, admittedly, but what he's saying is, therefore, this was somehow the consolation to Aaron, that there will come an eternal mitzvah, a continual mitzvah that will be done even after the Mishkan even after the Beis HaMikdash is no longer existent, and that is the lighting of the menorah on Chanukah. Our Chanukah, Chanukah Shnei Rot Shayta B'Bayit Sheni Aidei Aaron Banav. The lighting of the menorah on Chanukah, which was done by the descendants of Aaron. Ritzoni Lomar, and says the Ramban, I'll tell you what I mean. Chashmonai Kohen Gadol Banav, the Chashmonaim, or Matisyo is called the Chashmonai, the Kohen Gadol, and his sons, what we call the Maccabim. So in other words, the real reward to Aaron is not so much the fact that you are going to light the menorah in the Mishkan. That's true, but it's temporal. It's not going to be forever. The Mishkan will become a Beis HaMikdash, the Beis HaMikdash will be destroyed. But there will come a holiday where everyone will light a menorah. When we light our own menorahs, which we do even though we don't have a Beis HaMikdash, we remember the story of the Chashmonaim, the miracle of the oil that happened with the story of the Chashmonaim. V'lashon hazeh mitzvasiyah b'Megillat Starim l'Rabbeinu Nisim. And in this fashion, in this kind of terminology, I found as well in some kind of Megillat Starim, some kind of hidden scroll that was called the Megillat Starim of Rabbeinu Nisim, Sheskir Agadah Zu, which mentions this Agadah, and it says as follows: Reiti Bamedrash, says the Megillat Starim of Rabbeinu Nisim. I found in a Medrash Kevin Shekrivu Shnei Asar Shvatim V'Lakriv Shevet Levi, when the 12 tribes brought the korban, and Levi did not have a special korban to bring because not just Aaron was not mentioned, Levi was not mentioned either. Amra Kadosh Baruch Hu Moshe, God Kadosh Baruch Hu said to Moshe, Daber al Aaron v'Amar to Elav, speak to Aaron and say, Yesh Chanukah Acheres. Don't worry, Aaron. There'll be another Chanukah, another dedication of the Beis HaMikdash with the Chashmonaim. Sheish ba'adlakat neirot. There'll be adlakat neirot. V'ani yoseh ba'al Yisrael aydei b'necha nisim u'tshua. And I'm going to have this lighting of the menorah, which will be done in everybody's house, which will come about through your descendants, Aaron, through the Chashmonaim, through your children. Nisim u'tshua, miracles and salvation, and a Chanukah shekrui al Shmam, which will be called the Chanukah called after the name, which is called Chanukah's Beit Chashmonai. The word Chanukah actually means simply dedication. We call Chanukah, we call just Chanukah the holiday of dedication because we call it the Chanukah, but it's really called Chanukah Beit Chashmonai. Lefikach Yismich Parsha Zu LeParsha Chanukah Mizbeach, and therefore this parsha, lighting the menorah, is found right after the Chanukah Mizbeach. To say that Aaron was not left out, the tribe of Levi was not left out, but rather there was something that would happen forever and ever and ever. And similarly, A similar kind of thing, says Ramban, I found in a different medrash, and became a medrash rabbah, and here's the quote from that medrash. Amala Kadosh Baruch Hu Moshe, God said to Moshe, Lechem Oli Aaron al Tijarei, tell Aaron, don't be afraid, don't be worried, something greater will happen to you, your descendants, than it's happening today in the dedication of the Mishkan. HaKarbanot Kol Zman Shebeit Mikdash Kaim Heino Agim, the sacrifices that are being brought today and were brought by the Nesiim will be done as long as there is a Beit Mikdash. But the candles will be lit forever. And all the brachos that I've given to your descendants, Aaron, which is the Berkat Kohanim, will also not stop. So the Karbanot will come to an end. However, two things will continue. One is the Neirot, the lighting of the menorah, will continue forever, as well as the Berkat Kohanim will also be beginning forever. Let me just explain what this means. In Parshat Naso, so once again, I told you we had the whole chapter 7, which talks about all these different carbonot that were brought by all the Nesiim. Immediately prior to that, you have the Berkat Kohanim. Okay.
Very not. I don't understand why it's that, but
so this is what the Medrash Lamdein was actually saying. Medrash Lamdein was adding to this whole story about what's the promise being to Aaron. Here you have this whole big chapter 7, which talks about the different sacrifices brought by the Nesiim. Mm-hmm. Immediately afterwards, you have Aaron lighting the menorah. Immediately before it, you have Berkat Kohanim. So in other words, what is unique for Aaron, not just when there is a Beit Mikdash, but what's unique for being a Kohen, or reminds us of being a Kohen, which will be forever, is bracketing bringing of the Karbanot by the Nesiim. So the Nesiim had their day in the sun. There were 12 different tribes, not including Levi, because we included Ephraim and Menashe. So you have 12 tribes. Each one brought their own sacrifice on a special day. Aaron and the Leviim were left out. So Hashem says, don't worry, there will be something that will exist forever. First of all, that's why I'm going to put Berkat Kohanim before, which is the end of chapter 6, the Berkat Kohanim that the Kohanim give. They give that Berkat Kohanim even when there's no Beit Mikdash. Right? They continue to give it. In Israel, they give it every day. In the diaspora, Sfardim do it sometimes every day. Ashkenazim do it on Yontif. Tovim. But it's still done as a remembrance of what was. And the lighting of the candles. There is no candles in the Beis Mikdash, but there is the candles for Hanukkah that everybody does. So everybody will be exposed to remember what it is to be a Kohen. Of course, you're going to say, but a Kohen also gets the first Aliyah. Isn't that true? Why is that not mentioned? Why is the Kohen not mentioned as the first Aliyah?
Pardon me?
In other words, we're saying the uniqueness of Aaron is that the fact that his descendants are responsible for the Chanukah of our Chanukah,
yes,
and his descendants also do Berkat Kohanim. So therefore, the two items that identify really what the Kohanim played a special role that are ongoing in Jewish tradition are based upon the Kohanim. The Berkat Kohanim, you got to be a Kohen to Duchen, and the and lighting of the Chanukah menorah is based upon the story of the Kohanim of Matisyo. Yes. My question is, why not mention to be a Kohen? You also get.
It's not connection with what's the name? Beit Hamikdash. Kohen.
It's not. It's actually saying it's not connection with Beit Mikdash.
No.
Neither is getting an aliyah.
Yeah.
So why don't we mention as well if Kadosh Baruch was bracketing the Kadosh Baruch was bracketing the Berkat Kohanim, Kadosh Baruch was bracketing the gift of the Nesiim by the two things that identify Kohanim. Why don't we also include somewhere about the Kohen getting an aliyah for the Torah? So the simple answer is you really don't have to be a Kohen to get the first aliyah.
But he's there if he gets.
But if he's there, he gets. But we just saw a story in the Gemara the other day.
Yes.
Remember the story? Rav came to Bavel?
Yes, exactly.
And he got Kohen. So in other words, the real reason we give the Kohen the first aliyah is not because he's a Kohen. We give him the aliyah because we want to give kavod to someone who's more mechubad. But if you don't have a Kohen, you give someone else to be the Kohen. Yeah. And if you have the great scholar, you give the great scholar. So it's not really exclusive. You cannot train to become giving Berkat Kohanim if you're not a Kohen. If there's no Kohen there, if there's no Kohen present, you can't call him a Levi or Yisrael to give the Berkat Kohanim. And the story of giving of the story of Chanukah was all based upon the fact that the Kohanim were the ones, the Chashmonaim and the Maccabim were the ones who galvanized the Jewish people, and they were Kohanim. So Berkat Kohanim can't be done without a Kohen. An Aliyah, the first Aliyah, can be given to a non-Kohen. By the way, who washes the hands for the Kohanim? Levim. But if there's no Levi there, you wash their own hands. So Levi is not indispensable for washing the Kohanim's hands. But the coin is indispensable. You walked in. You see,
And you bring light.
Shkoyach. Okay,
good.
very good. Siman Tov. Okay.
Siman Tov, yes.
So therefore, what this Medrash is saying, we'll go back and read it again. What the Medrash is saying is that you have this long chapter 7, where all of the different Nesiim, all of the people are bringing their own sacrifices to represent each of the tribes, and it's fairly extensive and fairly long because each of the Nesiim takes about 5 or 6 psukim. So chapter 7 is a very long chapter because it repeats each one of the Nesiim one after the other. All Leviim were left out, so HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, you know what, I'm going to bracket this part about Nesiim bringing carbonot with the fact that after it, you see there's something that you, Aaron, and your descendants of Aaron will do, which is about lighting the menorah, the Chanukah, lighting the menorah, which eventually will be the Chanukah menorah as well. And before it, we're going to mention the Berchat Kohanim, because that's also something special. Even if there's no Beit Mikdash, there will be a Berchat Kohanim. So in other words, this Medrash, which the Ramban is now quoting from the Lamdeinu and from the Medrash Rabbah, is similar. It's really along the same kinds of lines, except it doesn't spell out. It doesn't say specifically that the lighting of the menorah is really about Chanukah. But the Ramban says that's what it means. V'hinei. Let's go back to reading words. So let me read again. V'roiti ob Lamdeinu. I saw also in the Medrash Lamdeinu. V'chein b'Medrash Rabbah. Amar l'Kadosh Baruch Hu l'Moshe. Hashem said to Moshe, Lechem oli Aaron al titzarei. Tell Aaron not to be afraid. For something greater than this, you are going to be designated for. The first Ramban in Parshat Behalotcha, page Reish Chaf Aleph. Okay. You're going to be prepared for something greater. The carbonot, for as long as there is a Beit Mikdash, will exist, but when there's no Beit Mikdash, no carbonot. However, the menorah, lighting of the candles, will always be there, will always be lit. Then all the brachas that I gave to you, to bless the Jewish people, and will also be forever. So what does this mean? So it explains the Ramban. When there is no Beit Mikdash, the carbonot will be nullified because it's destroyed. Even the Neirot will become batal. There will be no lighting the menorah in the Beit Mikdash. So what candles are we talking about? We're talking about lighting the candles by the Chashmonaim, which exists to when we light them even after the Beit Mikdash has been destroyed. We still celebrate Hanukkah. We celebrate Hanukkah in the darkest of times. We celebrate Hanukkah in the concentration camps, if they could. They stole little pieces of margarine that they would collect together and put into a potato, hollowed out potato, to light on the first night of Hanukkah. V'chein Berchat Kohanim, same thing Berchat Kohanim, asmucha l'Chanukat Nesim noheget li'olam. The Berchat Kohanim, which is mentioned in the end of chapter 6, right before the Nesim bring the carbonot, exists forever. So therefore, what is going on, says the Ramban, Darshu smuchim l'Chanukat Nesim l'fanach rachel l'chvodo shalom shlo nimna imahem. So before it mentioned the Nesim bringing their carbonot, which was a high point of the dedication service, it bracketed at either side, before and after, the things that were unique to Aaron that would be done forever and ever and ever, and was not delineated only by having a Beit Mikdash in present.
I have a question.
Yep.
In Torah is for a halakha Shabbat, halachot, one word here or one nekuda. Here he mentioned the Shvatim, all of them the same korbanot, the same. He repeat all of them.
Yes.
In one chapter, you can say everybody bring,
right.
That I bring.
Okay.
Why did every Shevet separate himself?
So there's a long Ramban which we did not get a chance to do last week. It's a very long and elongated. The Ramban basically says, the Medrash says that they're mentioned because they actually all had the same idea together. And because you couldn't really say that one brought the carbon and the other one did the same thing, the other one did the same thing, the other one did the same thing. So each one is enumerated together to say they all thought of the same idea concurrently at the same time. That's the reason why it's mentioned in such a long format. This shevet, that shevet, that shevet, this shevet. The Ramban suggests another reason. Ramban says that they brought a whole large bunch of materials, gold and silver, and then they broke it down into the different items that were brought. The kaf, there were different utensils that were brought, so that the Ramban says this shows that it was, and if you add up all the different pieces, because at the very end of bringing the different carbonot, it adds them all together, it's to say that the silver and the gold that was brought was so pure that when they melted down the big chunks into smaller sections, you didn't lose anything. Because normally when you have gold, even 24 karat gold, what percentage gold is 24 karat gold? 80%?
Pardon me?
24 karat gold is not just gold.
No, it's about 90%.
90%, 80, 90%, or silver is like 0.925, right? There's alloys built into it because it's so soft. It's very rare to find 100% gold or 100% silver. When you have alloys built in and you melt it down, the alloys melt at different temperatures. They settle out together. So if you took a big piece of gold or a big piece of silver and you melted it down to make it into smaller sections, you would find that it wouldn't put back together to be equal to the same thing, because the alloys would separate out from the silver and the gold itself. So the Medrash says that all of this was mentioned to say that the gold that they used was of such high quality that even when they broke it down into different items, it's still equal to what the sum total was. If you started with 1,000 grams and you broke it down to 12 different pieces, the complete total of the 12 different pieces equaled 1,000 grams. One drop was not missing from it. But that's a long Ramban that we didn't do in last week's parsha. That's one reason.
How difficult is it? You didn't have scale. How they give exactly the same measure?
What it means is if the purity of the gold is 100%, when you melt it down, you'll lose nothing. Not about people stealing. It's about if you have impurities.
From where would you bring the gold? From Egypt. It was 100%.
So you smelt it until you remove the impurities.
Yeah.
The more you smelt it, the more that you're left with a very pure
gold
system.
Already, for 24 karat already, is very soft.
Correct.
If you do more pure, it's more soft. It's very like rubber.
So you can make it more soft, but you won't be able to use it as jewelry because it's going to bend.
Yeah.
Correct, but for the utensils of the Mishkan, where they were very careful, it looks like they may have used gold that was pure gold.
What was the original question?
Why would the Nasim, there's such a long discussion about Nasim in the end of chapter Nassau. Each one of the Nasim,
why we were told separately about each one?
Yes, each one, correct. Right. Why each one is listed separately in Parshat Nassau. I said the Ramban has a long Ramban, which I didn't go into. I thought it was very complicated, not that really interesting, but he kind of goes through that to say that's the reason why it was mentioned. But the bottom line is, having listed all the Nasim, why do you mention, I'll go back to talk about Aaron at this point. Why is it important? Why are we talking about the menorah? Yeah. So that's the reason of the Ramban. So Ramban talks about this concept of Chanukah. It's actually a very, very famous Ramban. Even people who don't know Ramban are aware of it. Then Ramban has a couple of other pieces.
The same agada why Chanukah Mizbeach. When Chanukah is when Moshe came from Har Sinai.
Why is it?
Came Yom Kippur.
Yes.
From Yom Kippur until Kislev, they finished the Mishkan.
Yes.
So supposed to be start the Korbanot.
Yes.
Sometimes wait, we don't do it now. We wait until Nisan. 3 months.
Correct.
And the Kislev said, the man, why? This is my month. Why would you push it? Sometimes I promise you
you'll have an opportunity. Great. Okay.
What months talk?
Months talk.
So do mountains. So the
Ramban often does not quote medrashim that support his pshat. Ramban tries to give pshat, simple pshat. He feels that this medrash is kind of it's a premonition of what will take place in the future. The medrash is trying to talk about something that's real for Aaron. That Aaron will always have a role. The Kohanim always will have a role in Birchat Kohanim, or if not just Birchat Kohanim as well, in terms of being responsible for Chanukah. Okay, so that's the Pshat of the Ramban. Now the quotes here from the Ibn Ezra, and the Ibn Ezra has a much more simple Pshat.
He's very pashto.
He's extremely pashto. So the Ibn Ezra says, if you look at the last piece on page 772 in the Chumashim, the last pasuk in Nassau, he doesn't connect the beginning about Lotcha to the whole chapter 7, which deals with the different Nasiim. But the very end, which talks about all of what Nasiim brought together, they do this complete add up of all the different totals that Nasiim brought for the previous 12 days. So the last pasuk is, when after all is said and done, when Moshe came into the tent of meeting to speak with Hashem, he heard the voice speaking from Al Kapar, from the top of the cover that was on the Aron, Asher Alon Idud, Mi Ben Shnei Kruvim, between the two cherubs, by the very love. And the voice of God spoke to him, or maybe Moshe spoke to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So according to this, the very end of the dedication of the Mishkan is simply saying, now that we've dedicated the Mishkan, everything is set up, so now it's ready for Moshe to speak to the Almighty. So normally, we have people receive the commands from HaKadosh Baruch Hu at only very specific times. So normally, if you had to think, which would be a higher level of we're speaking to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, when you're awake or when you're sleeping?
Awake.
Right, when you're awake. Because it's easy to imagine that HaKadosh Baruch Hu can come to you in a dream and speak to you. Because after all, dreams are sometimes fantastic. Dreams are sometimes out of the normal. So in other words, a twist on this could be something that's really out of the normal. This would also be HaKadosh Baruch Hu could appear to you in a dream as well. Plus the fact that you're flat out, your senses are really not really responding to this world. When they say, you sleep and things go on, you're not aware of it, you're like somewhere else.
But that doesn't apply to Moshe because he spoke face to face.
Correct. So Moshe speaks face to face. So you could suggest possibly, the Ibn Ezra says, if Moshe spoke to Hashem face to face, he only did it in the daylight hours. So in other words, normally HaKadosh Baruch Hu would speak to someone in a very limited fashion, would speak to him at night. In fact, if you remember the story of Shlomo HaMelech, when the Almighty speaks to Shlomo and says, "What do you want?" and Shlomo says, "I want wisdom," it's in a dream. So to have a chizayon, to have a dream that HaKadosh Baruch Hu speaks to you when you're really not fully responsive, is more understandable that it's a lower level. If Moshe therefore speaks to Hashem, it's going to be in the daytime, face to face. You could have thought therefore that Moshe only speaks to God in the daytime, and at night the God didn't speak to Moshe. So says the Ibn Ezra, well, that's not really going to be correct, because when did they light the menorah? You see, they lit the menorah at night, so we're putting the menorah story right after the communication concept to Moshe to say the same way the menorah was lit at night. In fact, I told you according to the so therefore the communication to the Almighty was to Moshe both day and night. Moshe was on call 24/7. And in fact, as you know, Moshe separates from his wife. Right? He doesn't sleep with his wife because he always has to be ready to be communicating with God. So therefore, this becomes another way to support that HaKadosh Baruch Hu's communication to Moshe was day and night as well, in the same way that the menorah was lit at night and lit in the day as well. So therefore, symbolically, we're connecting the two. We don't say it outright, but the same way that Moshe goes into the Beis Hamikdash and HaKadosh Baruch Hu speaks to Moshe and Moshe speaks to Hashem, panim el panim, so too it happened any time of the day. So,
I want to know what type of voice spoke to Moshe.
Well, where did he hear it is a real question. Where did Moshe hear it? What does it really mean? So that's what the Ibn Ezra says. And the Ramban disagrees with it basically. He tries to respond in a Kabbalistic fashion, which I don't really understand. But at least the Ibn Ezra, Rabbeinu Avram Amar, Kinis Mechazot, the Parshalo, Diakia, Dibur Yeh Gam Balayla, that the communication to Moshe was all at night. Hisham Yeh Ner Doluk V'lo Yechaber. The same way the menorah was lit at night and didn't go out the entire night. So that shows the presence of God is somehow available. If the menorah lit all night, that the Shekhinah can be available to the Beis Hamikdash. And when Moshe went into the Beis Hamikdash, he was able to communicate with HaKadosh Baruch Hu even at night.
What's the significance of that?
The 24 hours Moshe was on call.
Right. So.
Like the president.
That's what.
Always, not only during the day.
So what?
So what? It's holy day. They say, no, the rabbi is only on the day. During the night, he's not rabbi.
You can't bother him. Moshe, you can always bother him.
Right. Moshe was like the footman, like the person who stands guard outside the king or the queen. It's always on call. Someone's always there. So that's why Moshe really had a very difficult family life, because he was always in communication with Hashem.
He had the greatest and yet the most difficult.
Right. So the Ramban actually disagrees with this for two reasons. He says, "V'zeino kach al dat rabbeinu." This is not according to what the Mechilta says. The Mechilta says, "Halo lo nedaber imo ela bayom." That HaKadosh Baruch Hu only spoke to Moshe really in the daytime. I'm not sure if this is translated in the English. He says only spoke to Moshe during the daytime. I don't know. I don't know how the Mechilta knows, but he says that this was only spoken. The communications were only in the day. So why could Moshe not be with his wife at night? So if God only spoke to Moshe in the daytime, why could Moshe not be with his wife at night?
Well,
I'm not sure he wasn't.
He actually is. He was not. Yes.
I recall Moshe had climbed to such great spiritual heights that his physicality was gone.
Okay, so he couldn't just relate to his wife. He was in a different world, maybe. Maybe there was a sense of tumah, of having relations with his wife would make him tummy until the semen dries out. Right, so even if he was with his wife at night, he might still become considered tamei until he went to the mikvah. There was a rule that they made we don't really do it today. People don't do it today since the time of Ezra, that a Baal Keri, a person who sees a ceremony mission, went to a mikveh. So he's going to say to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, wait here, I'm with my wife, it's morning, I got to get out of bed, I got to go to mikveh, I'll be with you in a half hour. So that you can really understand that God speaks to Moshe in the daytime, but he still couldn't be with his wife at night.
Miriam said, why he's not doing that? Does it mean he forgot his wife?
So that's possible. But at any rate, I'm not quite sure why the Mechilta says that God only speaks to Moshe in the daytime. And I think more importantly, what the Ramban then says is it's really not about day and night. In other words, when the Ibn Ezra is trying to tell you that Moshe's communications was with God in the day and at night, and the Mechilta is saying it really was only in the daytime, it's really not about the times of the day. It's simply saying that HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the vision that Moshe had was such that it was as close to HaKadosh Baruch Hu like it's daytime. Moshe could visualize HaKadosh Baruch Hu like it's day. When did it happen? It could be 24/7. Like Ibn Ezra is correct. It is 24/7. God could speak to Moshe around the clock. But the vision is like suddenly the room lights up. It's such a powerful experience, like what we call today 4D. When you sometimes go to these exhibits and they have like the simulators, and it's not just seeing the vision in 3D, but they have the actual chairs begin to move. We call it 4 dimensions. So this was the totality of the experience, the completeness of the experience, surround sound. Right, everything surrounded. So when Moshe spoke to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that was really the day. So what Ramban is really saying is all this stuff about Moshe speaking to HaKadosh Baruch Hu in the day and only in the day means whenever God spoke to Moshe, it was day. It was broad daylight. When another type of Navi receives a communication, there was an unclarity like seeing things at night. You see shadows. You don't see things with complete clearness. You know it's HaKadosh Baruch Hu, but it's not the clarity of what it is. The first communications to Shmuel. Anybody remember the first communication to Shmuel?
Yes,
he's lying.
Wasn't he?
He was lying down. He was lying down and he hears the voice. And he thought it was Eli. And he runs to Eli and says, did you call me? And Eli says, no, it wasn't me. So he goes back down, lies down again. He hears the voice again. He goes to Eli. And I think it's the second time or third time. Eli says, finally, go back down. And if you hear the voice again, you know it's God. But the first communication to Shmuel, and we don't know necessarily the other communications were different, he's lying down, he's lying prone, he's sleeping, he fell back asleep, and he hears the voice. So God speaks normally to other prophets in a vision. It doesn't mean nighttime and not daytime. It means in a vision that's not as clear. So that's why the Ramban really says, based upon his Kabbalistic understanding, it doesn't really mean daytime and not nighttime. It means that there's a clarity of Moshe Rabbeinu. So don't tell me, Rabbi Ibn Ezra, that the reason that we have the listing of the menorah here after the bringing of Moshe going into the Beis HaMikdash to speak to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, to tell me that Moshe spoke to God day and night. It's not day and night. The other prophets only got nighttime and Moshe only got the daytime. Moshe got day and night. The other prophets only got nighttime. No, Moshe's whole the comparison is not about times. It's about levels of clarity and completeness of the experience. And that's why the Ramban really seems to disagree with the Ibn Ezra's simplistic approach to what it is. Okay? Now, so that's really one Ramban. And Ramban actually goes through a long, detailed reason of why each piece goes from the beginning of Bamidbar till this point. Maybe we'll just leave it over. Let's see if we got time to do one more Ramban. Which Ramban should we do?
This is famous?
This is probably the most famous Ramban, that the Ramban says, the Balos Chasaneros, the promise to Avram that your descendants will light the Neros, is not the Neros of the Beis HaMikdash, the Neros of Hanukkah. Your descendants will be responsible for the fact that there will be an eternal lighting of the mitzvah of the Neros forever and ever and ever in Judaism, even after the Beis HaMikdash is destroyed. It's a mitzvah Rabbanan. But who's responsible for Hanukkah? The Chashmonaim, who were Kohanim. Yes.
Okay. Would you consider Aharon complaining? When we say he was chagrined, he was upset.
Disheartened. I tried to use the word disheartened.
But would you put that into the category of complaint?
No. Disheartened. Disheartened is not a complaint.
What do you mean, sir?
What's the question?
Well, he's a complaint. You say not complaint.
I said disheartened.
I think it's a complaint. But he's saying not complaint.
The term that's used here is Chol Shadaito.
So what do you mean?
Chol Shadaito literally means his spirit was weakened. He was depressed. He was disheartened. It doesn't mean he's complaining. If you got two people and they're both going for a promotion, and one person gets the promotion, the other one does not, so he can do two things. One, he can be disheartened, he's not sure they're not going to be happy, or he can go to the office and complain, or he can come back with an AK-47 and shoot up the office. Right? That's a real complaint. But in other words, but simply be disheartened, you get over it. You didn't get the promotion, go back to work, maybe you didn't deserve it, maybe you got to fix yourself, and maybe you'll get the next promotion.
Doesn't the Torah say that it's an avera to be depressed or certain things like that?
I probably used disheartened. I didn't say depressed. I did say depressed, but I really mean disheartened. Chol shadato is not depressed. Chol shadato means I just feel like, I'm weakened out. I kind of like the air was taken out of my sails. So if you are a healthy individual, if you are a well-rounded individual, you will get over that disheartenment. Life is all about, expectations. Sometimes you get them, sometimes you don't get them. But if you ride the wave, you can bounce back on the wave. The people that get depressed suddenly hit the wave, the bottom of the wave, and just keep going down. You can't bounce back.
Right.
And the people who are going to complain get even worse. They get frustrated.
Yeah, I don't mean like the state of depression. I mean to have episodes where you're upset.
You're upset.
Like the Torah talks about.
Get over it. If you can't get over it, then it's a problem.
Yeah, of course.
Okay. Maybe we got time to do the next Ramban about the Pesach that takes place at this point. So this is chapter 9. Okay, chapter 9 in the Chumash. Okay, beginning of chapter 9. We very rarely find the holidays being celebrated in the wilderness. In the beginning of chapter 9, where is it? It's chapter 9. Should be chapter 9:1. Yeah.
Page.
Yes.
2, Ark HaChavdalet.
Right. So before you look at the Ramban, this is page 778 in the Chumashim. So God speaks to Moses in the wilderness of Sinai. When is it? We have an exact date here. Second year, in the first month. Which is the first month? Which month is this? Month of? Nisan. Okay? Just that you really understand in terms of comparative dates itself. This is chapter 9 in Sefer, in the book of Numbers. If you go back to chapter 1 in the book of Numbers, give me the date that's told there. Beginning of chapter 1:1 in Bamidbar, which is found on page number 726. Okay? 726. When does that happen? Yes. When is that? Iyar. So the opening of the chapter, or the opening of Bamidbar talks about the second month, and chapter 9 talks about the first month. Did you ever hear the term that talks about Ein Muktam Amucha B'Torah? Sometimes things are out of chronological sync. That's a clear case where it's out of chronological sync.
Unless it's a year later.
No, it's the same. Both Bashana Shinit. Both in Bashana Shinit. The first one is Lachodesh Sheni Bashana Shinit. This is Bashana Shinit. Let's say B'Chodesh Rishon. It's clearly out of order. Right? So this is one of the origins why Chazal can prove that at least we know. No, sometimes they will say without really having a date or really having an order that the Torah is out of order. You say, well, maybe it is, and they say, well, possibly it is. But here there's a clear proof that at least we see one location in the Torah that something was put out of order. Why was this put out of order? Why was this put in this fashion? Because though you have to try to follow the flow of what's going on here in the Sefer Torah. In the end of Shemot, let's just go very quickly. The end of Sefer Shemot, without flipping back, we talked about building all the utensils for the Mishkan. That's the second half of the book of Shemot. After the golden calf, they got the Torah, the golden calf, and they got the second Luchot, they put up the Mishkan, they're told how to build it. That's Truma Tetzava, Vayakam Kud, they actually put the Mishkan together. What happens in Sefer Vayikra? Sefer Vayikra is called Torah Konim. All the laws about the Karbanot, all the laws about the Karbanot that are, who's responsible for the Karbanot? The Kohanim. So before you can get the Mishkan going, you got to know what the rules and regs are. Before you can pass the driving test, you got to know the rules of the road. And after it talks about the Mishkan, it talks about the Tzaras. And after Tzaras, it talks about how to other kinds of halachas that apply to Kohanim, and the Kohanim can become Tamei. So a good chunk of what's found in Sefer Vayikra is about the laws for the Kohanim, because we're getting them ready for the Mishkan. Then you come to the beginning of Sefer Bamidbar. The Jewish people are counted. They're counted in preparation now for the dedication of the Mishkan. The Kohanim are going to take the place of the Bachorim. The firstborn are being flipped with the Kohanim. The Kohanim are really going to be in charge. And then we dedicate the Mishkan, which really takes place in the end of it through Sefer Parshas Naso in last week's Parsha. Now that we've done it, we're ready to move. So they
Why
want.
do I need accounting for the Mishkan?
So they
I
count
need
it-
accounting when I go to work, but I need accounting.
You're ready for go to work. Sorry.
So it's a good question because they needed to know how to flip the Levim. They needed to count the Levim. They also want to know, I think, in general, how many people there were who would be responsible, and I guess to see how the people set up. It doesn't really tell us why Kadosh Baruch Hu counts them at this point. The Medrash says they were counted after the golden calf was really the last thing that occurred. Kadosh Baruch Hu wanted to see how many people still remained. But the bottom line,
if you're counting with Chatzia Shekel, then maybe you need the money for the
right?
Korban.
Okay, that's a good answer. But at any rate, the whole thing is really one kind of long flowing story. You don't really see it because every parsha relates something else, and there was some breaks in parsha and Sefer by Vayikra where it wasn't dealing with Kohanim stuff only. The other mitzvahs for you, V'yahavta l'reacha kamocha, Shabbos, and so forth. But as a rule, it's really about Kohanim. Yes.
Hazit HaShekel is already count. Why in the Parashat Bamidbar, mitzvot tzava, he mentioned going to the army.
Yes.
You mean you already go to work.
So they
the
wanted
army for going to Eretz
So they
Israel.
wanted correct. Okay, good. So Chanoch is correct. The reason is because once they do the Mishkan and get things going, they're going to go to Eretz Yisrael. They need to know which battalions will be ready to go. Excellent. Thank you. Good. So at any rate, the whole chunk of what's really happening from the end of Sefer Shmos until the end of Parshas Naso is really all about this whole routine about getting ready for a Mishkan, all the laws that need to be prepped for, the utensils and so forth. Now that it's done, they can talk about getting ready to go into it, to move along. So it goes back and says, you want to know what happened is, they ended up having the story of Pesach that wasn't mentioned. So we're going to talk about the story now of Pesach that happened on the second year round. So that's why it's chunked out of order. Okay? So now why do we got to tell me about Pesach? So the next question, Ramban, is why do we have to tell me about Pesach? Because Pesach, after all, don't we know about Pesach? Don't we know about Pesach? Because Pesach, the Jewish people came out of Egypt. So why do I have to tell me the second year that the Almighty told them to do Pesach again on the second year? Wouldn't it be axiomatic that they're going to do Pesach? And what's the answer? So the Ramban says a few answers, and I'm not sure if we can do it in 5 minutes. Maybe we can just lay out the questions, take our break, and come back and finish it off. The Ramban says, first of all, this was the first Pesach they did on their own. Second of all, you may have thought that Pesach only would be applicable once they got to Eretz Yisrael. Maybe Pesach was something that was applicable once they got to the land of Israel and they carried out the real true purpose of the Exodus. So the Exodus purpose was getting to Israel. So the next time you do an Exodus next time you do a Pesach, it's when you get to Israel. So it comes to tell me, though, even though they were in the Midbar, they could do it. And the third reason the Ramban is going to talk about is maybe this was the only Pesach that they actually did since they came out of Egypt until they get out of the wilderness.
How can you know that?
Because the Medrash already says this reason, the Ramban quotes it, because we find no other Pesachs that were mentioned after this. And the Ramban is going to suggest 2 reasons why they did not celebrate the Korban Pesach from here after this for the next 38 years in the Midbar. One is a medical reason and one is an ideological reason.
Medical reason.
The medical reason is because in order to bring the Korban Pesach, you had to be circumcised. Here's what we know. We know that when the Jewish people entered into Israel and they crossed the Yarden, they circumcised themselves. Now, which means that they weren't circumcised in the wilderness. So why not? So the Medrash seems to suggest that being on the move in the Midbar was not a conducive kind of process for undergoing major circumcisions for every child that's born. The desert air, the desert climate, it was not a way that this could be healing, and therefore as a result circumcisions were suspended. It sounds very fantastic because this is the identifying feature of the Jewish people. It was suspended for the years in the wilderness. If you're not circumcised, you cannot bring a Korban Pesach. A Korban Pesach can only be brought by a circumcised Jew, even if it's not your fault. Even if, let's say, you are a hemophiliac, right? Even if you could not be circumcised for medical reasons, so then you still could not bring the Korban Pesach. It's not about being a renegade or a mumar or a person who's broken away with the faith. Even if they're valid reasons, an Ariel cannot bring the Korban Pesach. So as a result, looks like no one brought the Korban Pesach. The second reason says the Rambam.
Didn't the Levim circumcise? I think we say that the Levim did circumcise.
Maybe, I don't know. Could be, maybe. So, but once again, you could say there were people who were circumcised. So their weakness is there were people circumcised. So the young people were not circumcised, but everybody for the last, were. So I guess it looks like that they didn't give a Korban Pesach where it couldn't be the entire congregation. The moment you have an exclusion, you don't bring the Korban Pesach. The next reason Rabban is going to suggest is that the people themselves decided not to do the Korban Pesach. As much as we think these people are on a high level, as much as we think people on a high level, there were certain gaps that they had. One of the gaps was they didn't celebrate Korban Pesach. It's hard to imagine. It's really very hard to imagine. This is the generation that received the Torah at Sinai. But somehow, traveling in the wilderness, they didn't do a Korban Pesach. Maybe they thought they're still en route. Maybe they thought it's only after they come to Eretz Yisrael. But it was their decision that they did not do a Korban Pesach.
It's less important for them. The Pesach is very important for us to remember the miracles in what
Okay.
they were there.
Very good.
It's a very true. When Ezra said, why didn't you prepare? Because nobody agreed with him.
Right.
Because they didn't have a sheep,
Didn't have a
cattle,
Any more sheep?
any animal, behemoth.
for Korbanot.
Yeah.
Yeah. So these are the questions. The Ramban will go through it. It's a bit of a longer type of Ramban. Maybe we'll take our 5-minute break now, do a stretch, and then we'll go back and do that. Is that fair?